Luke 22, verses 3 and 4, it reads like this. And Satan entered into Judas, who was called Iscariot, belonging to the number of the 12. And he went away and discussed with the chief priests and the officers how he might betray him to them. We're going to talk resurrection. But the fact is, Jesus has been risen from the dead for over 2,000 years. That's a fact. We know that no one knows where his earthly body is because he took it back to heaven with him. He's risen. But what we're after today is to be able to understand the benefits of that resurrection and yet take a good look at our present reality. Don't overlook your life, your condition, your circumstances. Don't allow the enemy to give you a narrative about yourself that's overwhelming where you just give up and quit. Don't do it, because he's risen from the dead. Listen to this thought. I want to tell you just a little bit about Judas before we get into this. Each of the gospel writers mentions the name of Judas. They each mention him as one of the inner circle of Jesus' 12 apostles. He's on that list. However, when Judas' name is mentioned, it's always the last one on the list. You don't want to be last. I need to tell you this. This ought to be a fight to get in the front row in church. Folk want to sit in the back. They always try to sit in the back. I'm telling you, you need to come up front. You don't want your name on the back of the list. But I will tell you this. His name is at the end of the list, but every one of the writers in the Gospels mentions the fact that he was the one that was going to betray Jesus. He was the betrayer. In fact, he did betray him. But make no mistake about it, Jesus chose him. Do not lose sight of this. Here's a thought. Jesus knew who he was, what he was going to do. And yet Jesus was willing to work with him. Boy, I'm telling you, 21st century Christianity needs to get this. He knew who he was, what he was, and what he was about to do. And nevertheless, he was willing to work with him. Help me to do this today, Lord. I want to propose something to you. That when you look at the life of Judas Iscariot, when you look at him, I want you to see him and his life as an indicator of Christianity. Oh, that was a curveball. You still swinging? Did you miss it? Look at his life. Look at him. And I want you to imagine that he and his life is an indicator of what Christianity is like. The moral failure of Judas as a thief, as a traitor, as a betrayer, we got that. We know that. That's well known. But there's another truth that needs to be talked about. The media in the first century that told the story about Judas and his failure is the same media that works today. You need to hear me today. Nothing has changed in over 2,000 years. When you look at this man, in fact, let's don't even look at him. Look at villains anywhere, criminals everywhere. The story is the same. Media people will take a villain and they will sensationalize their lives and turn them into urban legends. Y'all don't believe me. They'll tell stories about them. They have been this tall, now all of a sudden they're 20 foot tall. Sometimes villains are turned into heroes. If you leave it up to the writer of others, people will write about Jesse James and tell you what a magnificent person that he was and his brother. No. They were bank robbing thieves. Y'all ain't listening to me today. You go watching TV and you'll see in the early 20s Al Capone, and they raised Al Capone up like he was somebody special. He was a cold-blooded killer and a ruthless criminal. That's what he was. But television just makes people sensationalized. You ever watch that movie, The Godfather? They made 2 of them. Then they made some other movies about some gangsters. Al Capone, the Godfather was played by Marlon Brando, and then Al Pacino, and they made them look like they were somebody special. They were extortioners and serial killers. That's who they were. Here's the truth. All of them were crooks, turned into legends, put on TV, and somebody else decided they were going to be like them. I need some help this morning, Lord. If you pay attention to today's news, people will blame a whole Muslim community for the terrorist attack of one Muslim group called ISIS, and blame a whole community of people. All Muslims are not terrorists. That's just a fact. I don't care how it's made up on television or somebody that creates a new narrative. All Muslims are not terrorists. Bernie Madoff cooked up a scheme to be able to scam money out of investors and took people's life savings and squandered it and lost it. But not every businessman is a criminal. They're not. I want you to think about this. Broaden your scope with me this morning a little bit. Jesus is risen from the dead. I want to show you how this works in the kingdom of God. All of the 12 disciples, you can point out Judas as a failure, but all 12 of the disciples, they had crooked ways. Oh, Judas was a thief, motivated by selfish interest and demonic influence. But I got news for you. Every one of the disciples were flawed. And yet Jesus called them to himself. Come, follow me. And the promise was, I'll make you fishers of men. I see you for who you are. I know you for who you are. I know what you've done. But if you come and follow me, I'll make you. Every one of them were sinners with character flaws. To me, that's the narrative of the theology of the human condition. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We look at others and say, "Ooh, I'm glad I'm not like him." But you got your own junk. I want you to think about this. Thomas was not a person of great faith. He was a skeptic who demanded to see something visibly and physically before he would believe that Jesus had raised from the dead. They called him Doubting Thomas. Peter was the kind of guy who was impulsive and hot-tempered, easy to get into an argument. They just left Peter alone. He liked to fight too much. We talk about James and John. Do you know what their nickname was? Miss Melanie said, "I got it, Pastor. The sons of thunder." You ever wonder how they got that? If you met them, you'd know. These guys were different. They were not perfect. Think about this. Matthew is a tax collector, a Jewish tax collector working for the Gentile Roman government who cocked up a scheme. Listen, we can say that the governor Pilate wants this amount of tax, but if you add something extra on it, I'll cut you in, Matthew. Help me out. Matthew said, "I'm in." Sold his own people out to be able to make a living. Judas only differs in one way. I want you to see this. He only differs from the others in one way. He tried to go about the work of God his own way, differently than everything else. He went one different direction. I want you to see it today. The defining issue with Judas, it's not that he's a sinner. It's not that just he's a betrayer. He understood something. He knew something, and he ignored it. He knew that God wanted to build his kingdom on this earth. And Judas decided to bring in the kingdom of God by force. It's Passover time, Luke is telling you. It's Passover time. The lamb is about to be slain. And Judas knows that if I can get Jesus caught out in public, and maybe there's a collision between the Jews and the Romans, we can start something, and God will show up and fight for us and turn this thing around. And he tried to bring the kingdom of God into being by force. He did it differently. All humanity shares Judas' spirit, I want you to know. Judas had the spirit of compulsion and self-interest. Here we are today, and we love what's expedient. We trade lust for love and call it that, but that's not real love. We don't have the same level of integrity. We have a superficial approach to this world and even the general creation, because what God made was perfect, but we twisted it and turned it into something ugly. In the context of Judas's life, his soul is very well alive in 2025. I would ask you to consider this. Maybe if we could do this, if we could ask of ourselves the same question that the other 11 disciples asked in Matthew chapter 16, verse 26, 22. If we could ask ourselves this question, when Jesus tells them somebody at this table is going to betray me. They heard that much. They didn't hear nothing else. They heard Jesus say, someone is going to betray me. And they asked the question, is it me? They ask it twice. They ask it different ways. Is it me? Or is it I, Lord? Is it I? All along, they'd all betrayed in some way or another. Because there was a portion of their life, a portion of their heart, a portion of their spirit that they held on for themselves. They walked with Jesus. They watched him do the miraculous, but they didn't give all of themselves. They held it back in reserve. Is it me, Lord? Think about that now. The next time you are led into temptation to do something you know is wrong. Is it me, Lord? Am I the betrayer? Is it I? Have I done this, Lord? Have I made a choice based on expedience? Am I the person who's following in Judas's footsteps, where Satan is moving into him to do the things he wants him to do? Is it me, Lord? Is it me? Think with me for a second. I want to offer you a thought. I want to kind of contrast two words, conviction and preferences. What do you have that's a preference in your life versus a conviction? When I talk about preference, I'm talking about belief. But preference is the kind of thing where I believe in stuff that can change. And I prefer this over that. But when you have a conviction is a belief about something that does not change, regardless of the circumstances, the situations, the other details. If you have a conviction, you stand on it. No matter what. You stand on it. No matter how difficult. You hold it up. No matter how things look or how it feels. I'm not letting go, Lord. I'm not letting up. I'm not going to give up. I want you to take the Judas test with me. The Judas test asks you to consider this. What do you really believe about God? What do you really believe? I'm not talking about what your uncle told you. I'm not talking about when mom told you. What is it in your heart, in your life, in your mind that you clearly know and understand about God? And is your faith a conviction or a preference? You see, Jesus died for you to have that choice. Is your faith a conviction or a preference? Is your faith going to move with the wind, the culture, the custom, the tradition, or do you have a faith that has convictions based on fact and truth that you hold on to no matter what? I want you to consider this. Are you a Christian because you just prefer that kind of thing? Because it's all kind of stuff you can believe in America these days. You can believe that you can go out there and hug that tree and it's going to hug you back. I'm not, y'all ain't even thinking with me this morning. You can get into a cult and think you got something. But it won't get you to heaven. It won't make a change in your spirit. It won't transform your life. We talked last week in the book of 2 Timothy in chapter 1 and verse 3, and we heard Paul say that my conscience is clear. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 3, my conscience is clear. And I serve the Lord like my forefathers did. Is your faith based on custom, culture, tradition, or the way you've always done it? Somebody look up at me and say, wow, Pastor, hadn't asked myself that question. You see, because before Paul got converted, he was a believer who went around killing Christians. He was a believer who made it his mission to try to stamp out every Christian that existed, wipe out the church, close the church down, all in the name of God. That was his faith. That was his belief. That was his preference. Do you hold your belief in God because you have a conviction that God has spoken and you've heard his voice, and your conviction is that what he said, I believe it no matter what? Because the truth of it is, God has spoken. I want to know if you heard his voice today. I want you to listen for a moment, and don't listen to my voice. I want you to hear the Spirit of God. I want you to hear for a moment the heart of God. I want you to grasp the writer in the book of Hebrews trying to convince a community of people to not let go. Hebrews 1 and 2, chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 go like this. God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers, did you hear that? God, comma, after he spoke long ago to the fathers in the prophets, in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom he also made the world. God has spoken. He spoke. He spoke. Abram heard his voice. He spoke. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they heard him. They followed him. They knew him. The prophets that God called to the nation of Israel, he spoke to them. And then they wrote his words down. He spoke. The writer to Hebrews simply says, that was then, this is now. In these days, God is still speaking. He spoke to us in his Son that left heaven, came to earth, stood face to face with me, and he talked to me. I heard him. I experienced him. I know him. More than that, he knows me. He knows me. Yeah, it's true. Satan entered Jesus, and he willingly betrayed Jesus for some money. That was his choice. But I got news for you. Satan is, has been, always will be a liar. But that was the undoing of Satan's plan to rule in this world when he went into motion through Judas and told him, betray him. And Jesus says, go, do what it is you do. Do it right now. Because when I die, I'm going to set people free. When I die, I'm going to destroy the grip of death. When I die, I'm going to break the chains on every soul that puts their faith in me. I'm going to set them free. The writer in Hebrews goes on to tell the story that Jesus' life, his death, and victorious resurrection conquered Satan, sin, and death. Chapter 2, verse 14 simply says, this is how God worked it. Therefore, since the children share in the flesh and blood, he himself likewise also partook of the same. God became a man, that through death he might render powerless him who has the power of death, that is the devil. He shut him down, took the power, took the authority, the illegitimate authority he exercised from Adam and Eve till the point of Jesus' death. He took it. The Judas test doesn't do anything. It ought to reveal that I'm no longer bound by the rule and the authority of satanic, demonic beings. I've been liberated by the finished redemptive work of Jesus Christ. Colossians 2:15 says, when he, talking about Jesus, had disarmed the rulers, that's all the demons. You with me? All of them. All the rulers and authorities. He made a public display of them, having triumphed over them. Through him, he set them all down. So here's a question. What does God want from you? What does he want from me in April of 2025? What does he want? People, America is polarized right now. Our country is divided by racism, nationalism, school shootings, blatant gun violence and physical violence, bitter political divides. And I'm worried about the church because in many cases, the church is just quiet and silent, doesn't know what to say, doesn't know if I can say this or I should say that. God, help us to start to live loud. He didn't save me and liberate me to sit back and be quiet. He told me to put my light up on a hill and let it shine. What future do you want? What kind of future do you hope for? What part should your church play? And by the way, you guys do know the church is not this building, right? We're in a place of worship. The church is everybody who's put their faith in Jesus Christ. You are the body of Christ. You are the church. We are the church. I want you to consider the Judas test as I share a concluding thought with you. I've shared this speech before, but I want you to hear other details that go along with this. It's fresh in my mind, and I want to share it. I want to read something to you that was written by Daniel Webster back in 1825. It's a speech that he gave at the dedication service at Bunker Hill. I'm going to read this. I've done this years ago, but I'm going to read this again. But I want to read that, and then I want to pair it with another story that's written about Daniel Webster. And the story about him is called The Devil and Daniel Webster. Keep the Judas test in mind now. Judas is a betrayer. Judas is a thief. Judas is a liar. But so are every one of the disciples. And unless you miss the Bible and the biblical story about humanity, so is every man, so is every child, so is everybody that came through a womb of a woman. We were born in sin, and life shaped us in iniquity. So don't get to thinking too high. Think about this Judas test. As I share with you a story from 1825, and then contrast it with one that was written 111 years afterwards. I want you to think about this. This story that was written is written by a gentleman whose name is Benet. He writes this story about the devil and Daniel Webster. For all intents and purposes, Daniel Webster was a great man, from everything I can tell. Educated, political leader, husband, significant person, active and effective in the community. Great guy. But then Mr. Benet comes back and publishes a story that ran in the Saturday Evening Post on October the 24th in 1936. And he tells another story from a fictionalized version about Daniel Webster. He tells the story about Daniel Webster cutting a deal with the devil and selling his own soul. He cites in his story that Daniel Webster, although opposed to slavery, would go out and buy enslaved people, bring them to his house, and they would stay there with him as his servant until they paid off the debt that he paid for them. Are you with me now? Listen carefully, because if not, we'll overlook our need for help. Here's the speech. Mr. Webster. But let us remember that we have duties and obligations corresponding to the blessings we enjoy. Let us remember the trust, the sacred trust, attaching to the rich inheritance which we received from our forefathers. Let us feel our personal responsibility to the extent of our power and influence for the preservation of the principles of civil and religious liberty. And let us remember that it is only religion and morals and knowledge that can make men respectable and happy under any form of government. Let's hold fast the great truth that communities are responsible as well as individuals, and that no government is respectable which is not just. That without unspotted purity of public faith, without sacred public principle, fidelity, and honor, no mere forms of government, no machinery of law can give dignity to a political society. In our day and generation, let us seek to raise and improve the moral sediment so that we may look not for a degraded, but for an elevated and an improved future, said the man who bought slaves to put them in his house, and they would work off the debt he paid in his house and call it generosity. Slavery, I tell you, is slavery in whatever form it takes. Conviction dictates freedom from slavery at any cost. Compulsion, self-interest, and fear must never prevail in captivating God's people with superficial desires. There is white nationalism in this country, black nationalism in this country, brown nationalism in this country, and what you have is a divided America. The coming of the kingdom of God, it won't be televised. It's not going to come by force. It will only come when people are born again and regenerated in mind, in heart, and in soul. This only happens through the gospel that Paul said is the power of God unto salvation. This redemptive work that Jesus accomplished, not only on the cross, but in his resurrection from the dead. He broke Satan's power. He delivered the chains of sin. He blew up the grave. His resurrection sealed every believer's victory. It's done, people. He's risen. It's done. I'm going to end this thought. I'm going to do it on a light note because I don't know where this thought came from, but it popped in my mind and I wrote it down. And I want to end this thought in the immortal words of David Grantham Sr. You ever gone fishing with Big Dave and he catches a fish? You'll hear these words. Look at him, about to fall out of his seat right now. You'll hear these words. Book him, Daniel. Book him. The fish has been caught. Put it in the book. The deed has been done. The victory is won. He's risen. He's risen. He's risen from the grave. No government, no people, no law, none of that can hold God's people down. Let it liberate your mind. Let it liberate your soul. Let it set your neighborhood free. Let it set your family free. Let God's power do what God's power does and set the people free.